not really working. Do you think one of the solutions could be by separating it into different states?
I think I don't actually agree with the question that we all know the history. I don't think we do. I think there's a lot of us, like I would say a lot of Yoruba people don't know enough about the Biafran history. I don't think enough of us know enough about the history of Nigeria for keeping it apart. I think half of us, the question that was asked about who bought Nigeria is because of Burna Boy's album that we were all saying, we don't know our history. I think we need to be really frank about that. I don't really think we do. And then secondly, I think the problem is not just the way that Nigeria was made, the scramble of Africa means that people that should really be brothers are looking at each other like they're not. Because Yoruba and Igbo people, even when we're talking about spirituality, there's so many similarities between Yoruba and Igbo people that I don't actually think it would be that difficult for us to work together. One of the things that I think is the main problem with the North and the South, like I was saying, is that the Arab imperialist agenda is really, really, really strong. And then there's the other issue that I think we have is Nigeria is meant to be a federal state, it's meant to be a secular state, and it doesn't run as a federation, and it doesn't run as a secular state. And until it runs as an actual federation, and until it's actually treated as, if it's a secular state, why is there so much Sharia law in the constitution? Until it runs properly as what it is on paper, it will never function.
Do you think it could work as a federation? Because
it is a federation, but it's not run as a federation.
But could it work? Is it possible to have all these groups together and run it and have it run as a federation? Or is there just a different system that would work better?
I think it could run as a federation, but a federation will work if because obviously there has to be a unifying system. If the whole place is working for one Nigeria. But I don't think everyone is working for one Nigeria right now, because let's look at the Niger Delta, who's producing all of the oil. What is the Niger Delta is suffering when they are producing, bringing so much into the economy. And, as soon as there's an oil well or whatever found, it belongs to the federal government of Nigeria. That is not how federation works. If they want to actually fix how that works and how the government is going to operate, and whether the government is actually willing to operate in the interest of everybody, every ethnic group, every person in the whole country, then it's a different conversation.
What's it called? I think in terms of the future of Nigeria, obviously Nigeria is not working, but at the same time, you can say that Nigeria is working because it's working for the people that are keeping the system the way it is. I know in the context of the question of whether Nigeria should be deconstructed, obviously there will be conversations of Biafra, and there's also, in the past, I think there's been like some Yoruba separatist movements and stuff like that have been there. Obviously, in my opinion, the issue with dividing Nigeria is because, one, most people, especially the young generation now, we've all grown up with like Niger, Niger, and the identity of Nigeria, even though the word itself doesn't come from any of our languages or any of that, is so sewn into a lot of people's identity. But simultaneous with that, I schooled in Nigeria for 6 years. Obviously, I know a lot about the history of like Biafra, what happened, the Niger companies, the different companies and scramble and all that kind of stuff. But that was never taught in school. Like there's people in Nigeria, both Igbo people, there's a lot of Igbo people that don't know what happened in the Biafra War. Most of our parents don't even really talk about it unless you ask the question. The only people that really talk about it is if they stand for it. Like you come into the house and you see the flag. The only reason why I have the conversation with my parents about it is because I'm the one asking questions, not because they sat me down to have the conversation. And with Nigeria, I mean, obviously in reality, like back in the day, even though it wasn't for long, the Southern Protectorate of Nigeria made sense to some extent. Igbos and Yorubas lived together. And obviously the amalgamation of Nigeria, obviously in the sense of preserving power, resources and everything, I think, I forgot the name of the book, but if you guys want to look at like, not just Nigeria, but a lot of African countries, if you look at how African countries were drawn up based on the railway systems, for extraction. And I think because of there's so much like problems that stem from the way Nigeria was made, one, I don't think the way Nigeria is run like this now will survive. Like we will probably see another war in our lifetime. Or I think in a way that it could actually work would probably be some kind of decentralized system where each region has their own autonomy to govern themselves, whereas contributing to keep that preserved idea of Nigeria. Because the truth is, even though let's say Yoruba Igbo people, even though like we slag off Hausa people, they're not gonna let us go. like you have to understand one of the reasons for the Biafran War is because if you look at let's say if you look at north, west, and the south and east, the west you see there's more of the arts, there's more like business, banks. That's where Yoruba land, that's where all that enterprise is going. In terms of resources and like agriculture, that's normally an industry. It's normally south. But in the north, it's mainly rural. They don't have water. It's cattle. It's farming. They have irrigation problems, and plus because of their culture and the way their culture is set up, I mean, the reason why Boko Haram started is because they didn't want Western education in their schools. They wanted women to go back into kitchen. That was like this was them broadcasting what they were saying. So, as a political structure, I know some people have been calling for referendums. That would never happen because if as an economy, the North would not survive without the South. So the only in the way it is currently now, unless there's some massive war, I think maybe the best we could hope for is some kind of decentralized system or some parliamentary kind of system that actually runs in proportional representation as opposed to like by the numbers. Because even if you look at the Nigerian political system now, we're doing both the British and the American system somehow in the same day. Yeah. Doesn't make sense, but yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to mention why I don't think division will work. I understand why division is there because, for example, the welfare of different parts of Nigeria, especially tribes, is dependent on who's the president. And people say that because a lot of the presidents have been dominating Northern and Hausa, they kind of neglect other parts of Nigeria, the South. But I don't. So I can see why people want to separate because they don't feel like their interests are being met. They feel like they're only being used. But the reason why I don't think it will work and why I think the woman they did a great job is because they finished our kind of original ways of ruling ourselves, So kind of they literally got rid of kings, they got rid of the social orders, they got rid of hierarchy, they got rid of all those things. So there are generations of Nigerians who do not know how to rule ourselves. So even if like the divide, what makes people say that the Igbo can rule themselves, Yoruba can rule themselves, because for generations they've not had that. And that's why Nigeria is scattered. That's why Africa is scattered, because these people, they're very smart. If you want to rule a country, start with the government, whatever the ruling authority is. And when you get rid of the generations that knew how to rule, and because we only know how to be ruled and how to rule ourselves, that's why Nigeria's in a mess. So, and those same people, because even if we divide Nigeria, those same people, they've just gone from A to B. They're still gonna have that same mindset. Oh, I want my own money. Oh, I want shares in business. Oh, it's just gonna happen again, but on a smaller scale. So, as much as I understand why Nigeria should separate, I don't think it'll work. I think it won't work. But then, why not try something new? So maybe we should try and see how it goes. I don't know.
I think that I'm a big believer in division, and not just for Nigeria. I think if you understand that there was 10,000 independent African countries that were then divided into 52, there's no way that was 1886. That's what the Scramble for Africa did. It turned 10,000 independent, self-governing nations into 52 countries. And it didn't do that so that those 52 nations could be the best for themselves. It did that so that they could be so destabilized that it would take almost 2 centuries, not for us to get to a place where we're beneficial for ourselves, but to get 2 centuries. I think that if we keep the lines of the map the way that they are, what we're going to do is we're going to be exactly where they want us to be. So we're going to have coups again, we're going to have more wars, and that's what's necessary to actually create 52 countries that work and function. So they want to make Africa out of all of this trouble, do you know what I mean? So when it comes to the reason, like even when the northern Nigeria is, that should be attached to something else. It shouldn't even be attached to the south over here, do you know what I mean? And I just want to say 60 years or however old Nigeria is, not from this independence to whatever, we are, yes, we might know how to self-govern, we might not know all of this. 100 years into England, it was just Saxons and these people and them and over there, and then they were all beefing. It took centuries and centuries. It took thousands of people meeting up in a field and running towards each other, and whoever had the most people left, then you won, and then this, and then this. There's so many iterations that got us to where we are in the world, and I just want us as Africans and as Nigerians to realize that we can do those iterations too. And it doesn't mean that they're going to be good and they're going to be perfect, or they're always going to be done in the most peaceful way, but at some point, what division does and what redrawing the map does is it allows us to take back control over everything. If we keep trying to build within the lines that they've drawn, we're never going to get further than the barriers that they've put up for us, because it doesn't work, because Africa was never created for African people. Africa was created so that the resources from Africa could benefit the rest of the world. The entire concept of us being a developing nation, we're developing into the first world, so we're developing into a Caucasian view of what a world is. So that's why they made steps. So we feel like by achieving each one, we're achieving sovereignty, but we're not. We're achieving what is basically the whitewashing of ourselves so completely that there's no way for us to go back. I feel like we probably only have 20 more years to do that hard work, or we've lost it, and then all we will look back on ourselves as Mayans and as all of these people whose true way of living is gone. I feel like it's a really hard thing to accept, because it means losing access to certain things for a period of time. But what I would do if I was, I don't know, if I could, like, if you ask, like, what would you do? I think what I would do is, I would say, first of all of you, man, never pay you anything again. All of the debt is out of it. Yo, everybody, let's all look at ourselves. Let's have meetings after meeting at every level, at a government level, at a pedestrian level. Let's talk about the world. Let's talk about our culture. Let's talk about who fits with what looks like for what. Let's have as many town forums as we can for decades and decades and decades until we come to a real understanding of ourselves. At the same time, let's just use the resources we have here to feed and clothe ourselves, and then let's also protect ourselves from the outside world. Because the difference is, the reason that they could bomb Hiroshima and all of these places is because they don't care about what the land produced. But Africa, yeah, you could never wipe us out, because everything that runs your technology and everything that feeds you is in this land. So they're never dropping a nuke on us, and that's the most that they have over everybody. So I feel like we need to take the richness of our land as the confidence to tell people we're doing everything for ourselves now. And if you still want access, you need to get in line. And we need leaders who understand that that is the actual power that you have. The fact that you're feeding the entire world and you're running the entire world's technology. And if you talk to them and no, you can't come in, what are you going to do, really and truly? So yeah, that's what I think about it. I just want to say, to touch on what Akhnel is saying, is that I think to say that we can't self-govern ourselves is very self-deprecating, and to imply that Africans don't have a system of governance. But I think what we need to understand is, like was mentioned earlier, is what happened to us is complete indoctrination. We are not trying to look, we completely devalue anything that is indigenous to us. We've got alien political systems, alien educational systems, alien systems of viewing the divine. Nothing is indigenous to us. Every system of politics comes from your cultural perspective. We completely lost our cultural nuances in every aspect of our lives, other than what Afrobeats and Hollywood, right? We need to actually start to think about, all right, how do we function as a people, right? Because yeah, you can split up again, and then what are we going to still be saying? Okay, let's ape the American system, let's ape the British system. We don't place enough value on what existed for us before. Because like we're saying, we're developing into the first world. How are we going to develop like America and the UK? You can't have a system. You can't have another transatlantic slave trade. That's how they develop. So what system are we trying to copy? What system are we trying to ape? So we need to understand, well, how were we governing ourselves before? It may not be perfect, but before they came, we were doing something. We weren't doing in Africa, where we trying to say that we should do it. We had a system, and there was like the Benin had, walls looked like 4 times longer than the wall of China. They had electricity before they came. So what were we doing? But I don't think we place any value on the systems that we have, because we still believe that white is right. And until we have a complete reorientation and a complete we almost need to re-indoctrinate ourselves to understand that we are not still a conquered species, and we can actually have a system that we develop for ourselves, and that we don't need to mimic our other systems. Then I don't think it matters how we split. We can keep splitting, we can jiggle puzzle the whole thing's not going to work.
So I'm literally going to say the same thing as you to me, that unfortunately it could work, but a lot of... So my question actually is this, instead of the statement. Do you think that it's the diaspora have a less colonized mindset compared to the natives, because from what I see Nigerians say or do, I feel like we're the ones that are valuing. We see the value in Nigeria, our resources, and everything, our talents, our gifts. We are the ones that see in how much we've given wealth to the Western world. But yet, for some reason, we're back home. These people, for example, one of the ways that the British were able to benefit from destabilization was that they would give guns to the tribes and take their diamonds and crude oil. Like we didn't value and have knowledge over what we have, and even to this day, people still have that same mindset. So how do you think it's a more diaspora mindset that we value resources because we're not there? And how can we overcome that? How can we teach these natives how to value what's there? Because we're the only ones that see it. Will it take diaspora to go back to Nigeria and all the natives and re-rule it? Is that what it takes?
Should be careful with that. Careful with that. That's white savior complex.
Wait, one second. I'm going to give it to you one second, but I just wanted to push back on two things. One of the self-governance, and two, in terms of the question about like the diaspora and stuff like that. You know, in engineering and physics, there's no such thing as a perpetual system. But the way they drew up Africa, it was a perpetual system. You can root the genocide in Rwanda, most of the atrocities that happen in America, in Africa, you can root it to the way that the maps were drawn. You can root it to the way the systems they did in which they gave one tribe this and kept things destabilized. And in terms of Nigeria, when we became independent, it was a requirement that we were going to keep the same political structure and the same system of governance that was there prior to independence. Remember, don't get it twisted, we didn't have like a all-out American Civil War to get our independence. Even France just started giving people independence and then said you owe us 10 billion, whatever, and all these kind of things. But even in saying that, my thing is this, we're living in a perpetual system in that we're doing the same thing, expecting different results in the same political system, in the same way that we're still fighting each other. And because there's no political ideology in most African countries, it comes down to ethnics. That's where people, that in the beginning when we made our political parties in Nigeria, that's the way people were voting. But now that, the whole self-governance thing, it's not that we don't have the ability to self-govern ourselves, it's just that we haven't given ourselves the actual opportunity to actually self-govern ourselves. We were living fine. People get it twisted. Like Africa was not, like Africa, a lot of Africa, and not even just Africa, both Africa and Asia, but specific Africa in this context, has contributed so much to the world, the world view, to the world we're living today. Even though, like we're in Black History Month now, a lot of the inventions that we think are made by white people, people are like, oh my God, shit, it was a black person that made that. We have this view, and because we are privileged enough to be here, because our parents, for some of them, escaped their situation, we also need to be careful of this whole, savior complex that we have. That okay. Because the thing is, you take the random person who's selling puff on the road, who only knows how to speak pidgin, and ask her what is wrong with Nigeria. She'll tell you what's wrong. But we're privileged in the space that we can talk about, because I don't have to worry about water coming out of my thing. I don't have to worry about electricity. I don't have to worry about school. So the basic necessities of these people that we're talking about, these people want change. But like I've been there during an election in Nigeria. They know the government's not going to do anything for them. Like they know. So when it comes to election day, if this booth wins PDP or this booth wins ACN, everyone's going to get 10K each. So I'm going to take my 10K because for the next 4 years, this is all I'm going to see from the government. This road, from the moment I went to Nigeria in 2006 and came back in 2012, I've seen the same sign that says this road is commissioned to be due by the federal government. For most black people, I can show you the same guy who made Louis Vuitton, and if it was Chukwu and Mecca Vuitton, then you guys would go and buy Louis Vuitton, even if it was you understand what I'm trying to say? The whole mindset that if it was white is right, and one of the reasons why people don't even know, we're talking Independence Day, 1960. We could have got Independence Day in 1957 in the State Assembly, and they were like, this was the North. They were like, we're not sure we really want to govern ourselves right now. We're happy with the political structure, and that's why we didn't get to 1960. And stuff like this is what the first we prop up the first world, quote unquote, and you see interventions by the US or whatever. You see them go to Iraq, where there was no real problem when before they came. You see them go to Syria, you see them go to Libya where there was no problem, you see them go to Somalia. But I didn't see them go to Congo. I didn't see them come into Nigeria during the Biafran War. I didn't see them go into Burkina Faso. I didn't see them go into Mali. I didn't see them go into all these countries where there were genocides and things happening. Why? Because the systems that we've allowed to keep going on perpetually allow their power and their money to keep going up. Even these changes we're talking about, don't get twisted, that's when they'll now start thinking, okay, there seems to be corruption in Nigeria just because of these kind of changes happening. So it's about us, getting rid of this whole, okay, we can't govern ourselves and go for it. Go, even if we don't get to back what we were before, we can make something new.
I personally do believe that we should separate into the Oduduwa Republic, Biafra, etc. And I also don't think that us in the diaspora have a less colonized mindset. I think we can just see that whole Western dream and that here is the dreamland is not real. I think that's the only difference. Whether you were brought up in America, brought up here, or brought up in Nigeria, if you know about your history, you know about your history, you know where you're from. About the can we govern ourselves, even things now that we're seeing with the Black Lives Matter movement, with defunding the state and prison abolishment, in a lot of African countries or previous African countries, there was no prison system and the countries were running fine and there wasn't as much crime. So I think the whole thing with can we run ourselves is self-hatred a little bit. And I think we need to give ourselves more credit.
And just to add this small point, in terms of the self-governance thing, we're Nigerians, and the three major ones were Hausa, Yoruba, and Igbo. And if you just look about how our cultures were structured, the Igbos were more egalitarian and more like parliamentary kind of system. The Yorubas had more like a kingship structure. The Hausas had their own thing. And so in terms of even exploring the whole system of governance, across African cultures, there have been so many different forms of how that has actually manifested. Some of it's somewhat similar to what's called European styles, but different in their own rights as well. So I also want you guys to be mindful that in terms of whether it's possible, it has been possible, it has been done. Mansa Musa wasn't out there doing our president of Mali or anything like that. They had their systems that were making it work.
Can I just add as well that it's not just in the past. If you think of how little the Nigerian government does for the people that live in the country, they're governing themselves as we speak every day. When my dad moved over here, he started our Halfway Improvement Union, which is everybody that's from our town, when you move to London, this is the house that you come to. We have meetings every month, you pay your dues, that money goes back home, it goes towards maternity ward, it goes towards the school, it goes towards everything else. Federal government road in Abu State has been unmaintained for how long? But it's okay, cool, that's now we'll save money up, we'll do certain things, we'll fix the road. African people have never really, Nigerian people, let me just say, in Nigeria, have never, since those 2 or 3 years after independence, really benefited from the richness of their country, but they're not there. They're still sending their kids overseas. They're still building and managing and creating a sub-economy under a very oppressive economy. So we're already doing it. And if we had the freedom of not having governors who are taking all people are taking all of our money, the systems would create ourselves. All we need is opportunity, because I think that's what the whole Nigerian curriculum needs. It's not about the state of Nigeria, but it's about the resilience and the state of Nigerian people and how much we actually can do and how much we do every day. Do you know what I mean? That's why we all love this kid, because you know where he came from and you know what he was able to create, and then what that energy was able to do for so many other people. And just to touch again, and that was my last point about the whole what we are in the diaspora, and whether I'm somebody who has plans very imminently to go back home. And I feel like one thing that's really important that we have to understand is, in many African countries, history is not a mandatory subject, and it hasn't been for a very long time. So they're not learning it with the privilege that we have, and then to compare it to the world. But then what we do not have is a working knowledge of our country. We don't know what they go through every day. We don't know what the effects are back home. We are Nigerians, but we are not Nigerians the way they are. So in reality, really and truly, we need to go home to connect, to understand what their struggle is, to understand their perspective, to understand what they want from their country. Because even though we are Nigerians, by virtue of living and being raised there, there's something that they have that we can't just come and say, this is what I'm going to do with the Nigeria that you've been living in here all this time, do you know what I mean? So I feel like it's formulating that the first step is the diaspora and the people back home seeing each other eye to eye and building a relationship and then understanding what the path is. Otherwise, we do run the risk of just being colonizers.
I just wanted to comment on one thing about the diaspora going back. We've kind of got a very solid blueprint of what that looks like when you get it wrong. And it's called Liberia, where it was essentially founded by people that were of the diaspora who came with a certain mindset that the people that were there weren't able to solve their own problems. Fast forward to today, you have an underclass of black people governed by an upper class of black people who thought they knew better, and they're the children of people who thought they knew better. It's important for us to change the vernacular of how we speak about people, both here and over there. And it starts with, and it's not personal to you, I'm definitely not referring. It starts with how we consider people, because people, no one anywhere is stupid. The people are limited by their context. Because all of us here look like geniuses because we've got access to Wi-Fi. So without Google, most of us don't know anything. So in the context where people don't have the same resource and access, they can seem as if they're unable to actually solve their own challenges. Because to be fair, everyone knows what's wrong in Nigeria. Anyone on the high street of Nigeria is a government correspondent ready to break it down for you. The issue is that you have a new culture that's set into Nigeria where once you get into a position to make change, you make change for yourself. You make change within the confines, the context you find yourself in. Because I've got cousins who are waiting for someone in the village to make it into local government so we all eat. Go and get a job. Go and do something productive. No, that's not the blueprint. The blueprint is you get into government, and that's how we keep this gravy train rolling. If we are going to actually make a change, like I said, it's important for us to go back and actually really embed ourselves in the context, because we are not British and we're also not Nigerian. Maybe you came last year, maybe you're Nigerian. But for the rest of us, we're kind of in limbo. Because a lot of the Black Lives Matter stuff we're vying for here, we're debating something in someone else's living room. I'm not coming to any of your house and having a say on what's on TV, not a meaningful one. And that's the same thing we're going to have here. If we go back to Nigeria, we're not going to have a meaningful say on anything else there until we're embedded, until we really get it. So if we are trying to make a change, if we are trying to do anything, it's going to take time, it's going to take patience, and it's also going to take the willingness to accept that it won't be you that makes the change, that maybe someone else will go and build on what you've done, or maybe you might lay a little bit of the foundation and then it becomes something afterwards. Because if we're looking for a quick solution, how many years did it take for them to get to the hinterland? The British didn't get to my village till 1901. After being in contact with Africans up and down the coast for the better part of 400 years. They didn't get, most of the parts of interior Africa have not even been charted till today. They don't know and they don't care, but they have control at this stage. So for us to undo something that's been maybe a 500 to 600 year mission, but if you go further back, the Arabs have been on it before then, Alexander the Great and all of them people have been trying to break down this system for millennia. They've been trying to, and they've essentially built what we have today, or left the pieces of what we're trying to piece together today. If we think in one generation we're going to go over there and change the whole mindset, change the whole industry, change the whole structure, and number one, not meet any resistance, or from the people who think we're there to help, and number two, not meet any resistance from all the people outside that benefit from that system, we're deluded. So.
Thank you. I think the most important thing that anyone in the diaspora can do is learn about where you're from, understand it, understand the culture, understand the history. Because if you don't have that basis, you can't do anything, you can't make any change, because you don't understand what you're trying to change.
I'll just add to that in terms of, just learn. The funny thing about when you learn is that when you see truth, then it's hard for you to like close your eyes towards it. So when you realize like the history from your past, start the foundation of where you're from and then expand that to Africa, because you might think you're Nigerian, but you don't know that you just migrated from Zimbabwe. So it's important to actually understand the full context of Africa, but start from somewhere because Africa is very big.
we all have a very specific set of skills, and not all of us have to do everything. So just know what it is that you're called to do, and know that as you do it, you are adding towards the bigger picture of everything that's happening, and stay connected with as many people from as many countries as you can. So as you keep traveling through life, you can keep tweaking what you're doing to fit into the bigger picture of what's happening.
I was just gonna say.